The members, Trustee Berg, Trustee Galante, Trustee Mueller. Item 2, consider approval of the minutes of the Marketing Committee meeting held on September 24, 2018. Is there a motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Item number 3, discuss citizen survey. Donna Frankby is going to take this NCS survey review.
I assume we're going to go through this line by line?
Yes. We have the next 45 minutes. It's working. Can you hear me okay? Oh, well, I'll talk as loudly as I can. I'd like to give you the executive overview of the citizen survey. So by way of process, as you know, we, in July of 2019, mailed the survey out, sent it out to 1,700 households, and data was collected through September 11th. The village did a similar survey a few years ago, not exactly the same though. This is a slightly different survey that was facilitated through the National Research Center. So this process allows us to benchmark our community to other communities across the country. So this survey was mailed to 1,700 households, provides the opinions of a representative sampling of 487 households. So that gives us a margin of error of 4% for all respondents. And to make sure the opinions are relevant, the data is needed based on census data. So it's compared against results of surveys from over 600 communities across the country, and responses are noted as either being higher, lower, or similar to the benchmark. We also did, as you likely know, an opt-in survey that was open to anyone that happened at the end of August, and then those results are also reported in the supplemental online survey results that you see in your packet. There we go. Thank you very much. Okay, so data is measured across 3 pillars of community. That's community characteristics, which measures things like ambiance, services, and amenities. It's measured on governance, which measures quality of services provided by the village, and on participation, which measures sense of community. The good news is overall, from a 10,000-foot perspective, we had about 88% of the respondents ranking Tinley Park as good or an excellent place to live. So this information is measured across 8 facets of the community. So that's safety, natural environment, economy, education and enrichment, mobility, built environment, recreation and wellness, and community engagement. So as you'll see on this slide, this is the dashboard of the measure of those 8 facets. And the good news is that there is nothing that we measure lower than the national benchmark. The ones that are in a blue mid-color are those facets that are measured similar to the national benchmark where we compared, and we measured higher than our benchmark in mobility. You'll note the stars on there. So that is the 2 things that our residents identified, being safety and economy, as the priorities for the Tinley Park community in the coming 2 years. Next slide has the dashboard of the summary. So you can see across the top the 3 pillars that are measured, and down the left side the 8 facets that are measured. And then you'll note the higher benchmarks being, again, the mobility, the built environment, and on the governance side, recreation and wellness. So overall, the dashboard summary notes that ratings within most facets tended to be positive and similar to the national benchmarks. Our community characteristics pillar, the assessments of mobility and built environment were strong and higher than national benchmarks. For governance, the ratings of most facets were on par with national averages, with the exception of recreation and wellness, where it was slightly higher. And then our participation, our rankings are similar to the other benchmarked communities. National benchmark comparisons, we had 4 items that were lower than average, and those are all in the participation category. So those are things like volunteering time to groups or activities, participating in a club, stocking supplies in preparation for an emergency, and working inside of Tinley Park. We had 18 items that ranked higher than average, and those you see are street lighting, traffic flow on major streets, ease of travel by car, bus, transit services, ease of travel by bicycle, ease of travel by public transportation, our drinking water, our recreation centers, our programs and classes and fitness opportunities, opportunities to attend cultural, art, and music events, availability of affordable quality housing, affordable quality food, variety of housing options, overall built environment, ease of public parking, availability of paths and walking trails, and those who used bus, rail, subway, or other public transportation. So would like to note too, to be deemed higher or lower, we have to be over 10 percentage points, higher or lower. I'd also like to call to your attention, there were two customized questions that we had asked. One was how our residents are securing their information from the village. And the top three, the people who ranked it either as a major or minor source, are our website, or 89% ranked it as a major or minor source. Newspapers, which loosely translates to the Tinley Park Junction, and our annual report. Least utilized are our YouTube channel and our Twitter account. The other customized question that we asked were the likelihood of attending or using Harmony Square amenities. So we had listed out several there. The highest rankings were food festival, farmers market, weekend music performances, and food trucks. Least likely were our adult outdoor exercise classes, youth outdoor exercise classes, and hockey. So overall, the livability report indicates that Tinley Park is a desirable place to live, with safety as a feature that contributes to the quality of life, because about 9 of the 10 community members gave high marks to our overall quality of life. Mobility, as I mentioned a couple times, is a strong community feature, where 9 in 10 residents positively assess the overall ease of travel in Tinley Park. Residents did emphasize the importance of the economy and value housing availability and affordability. And our wellness offerings ranked very high and were recognized as an asset to our community. The other thing we did was compare ourselves against our peers. So there were 30 communities in the state of Illinois where our data was compared to a peer group of communities that have taken the survey that have populations between 10,000 and 100,000. So these benchmark comparisons are found in the packet that you have in your available to you with that technical appendices on pages 29 through 33, if you're interested in looking. But here is a list of the communities that we compared ourselves to in alphabetical order. So there are 30, like I said, that have taken the survey in the past. So now our peer benchmark comparisons are, there were 133 items on the survey, and of those, in comparison to our peers, Tinley Park had 111 similar, 4 lower, which again were all participation activities, including the source, yes, they were, and 18 higher than the benchmark. So the 4 items that were lower than the average were being honest, recycling at home, and using the library or other services. So on those 4, we came in slightly lower than our peers. There are 3 items where we were higher than the average, and those are ease of travel by public transportation, having a vibrant downtown and commercial area, and offering the opportunities to attend cultural, art, and music events. So what are we going to do with this data next? We have, missing a slide here. But our next steps, our intention is to post these reports and make them accessible on the village website starting tomorrow. These reports have also been made available to management partners, so they can use that for review and analysis as part of our strategic planning. And then we'll continue to carefully analyze and fully utilize these, both during the strategic planning process as well as the upcoming budgeting process. So there is your executive overview. Are there any questions or any additional information I can provide for you?
Any questions, guys?
I was just curious what kind of wellness, they talked about, one of the items was the wellness that they liked. Like what is it?
It tended to be a lot of the things that the Park District offers.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, in this, this survey, I think as Donna mentioned, will be valuable to us when we do the strategic planning, but I think certainly all the village committees, there's things in here that you may want to spend some time on that's related to your committee. And one of the things we're also going to do is we did a survey a few years ago that was slightly different, but had a lot of the same questions. And so what we haven't done yet is kind of a comparison to see, what's changed. We hope things are better from a few years ago, but we'll be doing that separate analysis also that will be done before the strategic planning
Great. I think it was really interesting. I really, a lot of things are obvious, like we have the best police and fire, obviously, and we have a great footprint coming off the train. Very important thing to note. Also, I was surprised by the newspaper. I thought that would be really low on how citizens get their news, since we stopped the exchange several years ago, 2 years ago now.
Right.
It's interesting, they still like to read it, the citizens and residents.
Definitely.
It's helpful for the plaza programming also. I'm really surprised by the hockey and the skating and the splash pad coming in so low under the radar as far as things that people would like to do. So I was surprised.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, thank you. I think it was worthwhile. I think it was fun to look at and, focus on the things we already know are great
Oh,
and see some other surprises. Well, thank you. Item number 4, receive update on village holiday plans.
Yes, I just want to share with you a couple things with regard to the holidays. I had submitted, Laura's going to change over to a different side. Last night, we had a Marketing and Branding Commission meeting. We did share the proposed banner artwork.
Pretty.
And there were a couple that our Branding Commission wasn't excited about, so we've made a couple modifications, and I'm presenting these to you as well. Got some feedback as I sent them out to them today. Our objective here is to carry the brand throughout and, of course, celebrate the holidays. So these would be up from like mid-November through probably mid-January, realistically. And so we would like to suggest that this series of banners are the 3 that we would host. And they're all music-related, again, carrying our brand.
So we have all 3?
All 3 would be a series. And so where you see the
Okay.
purple banners that are up right now, are branded purple banners, different series would go up in different locations throughout town.
They're beautiful.
so the Santa ones are going out? Okay.
I hear there's somebody who didn't like one of them.
One less thing for me to talk about?
These are nice and classy. I would also like to
Really
share with
classy.
you for the tree lighting ceremony. We've spent some time on that event because, as you know, as you likely know, those of you who were there in years past, we've had a couple challenges with that event. Between the way the train came in and the source of entertainment and it being very dark out there. So we're making a couple tweaks to that event this year. Instead of the blimp screen, we're going to have some professional Victorian-style carolers who will be out there. We're going to extend the sing-along from 5:30 until 6:15 to avoid some of the Metra interruptions that we generally do. We won't be able to avoid all of them because of the busy time and a Friday, but that will get us a considerably better block of time to work with. The stage is going to be in the northwest corner of the Lot D, and as you know, I mentioned last month that we are moving the holiday market tent to the north lot as well. And then T-Mobile is going to be one of our vendors this year who's going to be a sponsor. They're going to be serving hot cocoa and providing charging stations right in the area between where the tree lighting ceremony is going to be and where the tent is. So we're also going to leave the platform lights on to mitigate some of our lighting issues that we have out there. So just filling you in, it'll be on December 6th. So hopefully you'll all be able to be there.
Definitely, won't miss it. It was so pretty last year, and it's just beautiful.
Our downtown is beautiful.
We're very lucky.
Absolutely.
You can't buy one of those.
And then, did I read that the Kris Kringle Market was not interested anymore, or did I miss?
That is correct.
Okay.
They have not disclosed where they're going, but they have shortlisted, and we did not make the cut.
Okay, so we can't expect that on the other side of the train tracks during those?
No.
Festivities
Our
this
regular
year.
holiday market is going to be moved to the north side, but the big Kris Kringle Market like they have in Daly Center is not going to be
Okay.
coming to Tinley Park.
Maybe when the plaza's finished.
That's what I was thinking.
Perhaps.
I'm sure that had something to do with it.
Make our own. That's right.
All right. And speaking of plaza, item number 5, receive update on Harmony Square Plaza.
Yes, thank you, Trustee Berg. I laid at your place there some additional, hopefully that you can read it a little bit better, the plans that we just received. But we've been very busy since the last time I gave you an update, several meetings, as I mentioned, some of them as a full task force, and then some in our subcommittees. We've tried to, we improve our coordination and communication by keeping it as a larger group, and then we have subgroups for acoustics and architecture and engineering that we also meet with. So that organization has worked very well to keep us moving really on an accelerated timeline now so we can meet our deadlines. So one of the more recently discussed items was the architecture. We have two structures on the plaza, the stage and the support building. And there was a lively debate, and I was really impressed on the comments that came out of it. But staff felt pretty strongly that, there was one view shed when you're out there that includes the train station, the metro station, which is so beautiful. And it seemed negligent not to have some sort of head nod to whether it be the architecture or the materials or the color palette of the metro station as it stands now. So the design of this, what you're seeing is an evolution, and it really has changed over time. The architect felt strongly that they didn't want to dilute the uniqueness of the station, and we didn't disagree with that. But we felt that, the whole area is going to work as a campus. Donna's going to be programming that's going to integrate, from the north lot through the station on the right-of-ways. So it would be negligent in our minds not to consider it as a whole. So we came up with, I think, a positive solution where we start to bring forth maybe not necessarily the arts and craft architecture of the station, which again is unique and beautiful, but take some of the color palette and the materials that come and kind of warm up the modern design that we were seeing for the two elements. So starting first talking about the stage, and there's a lot, you love architects' lingo, but, a lot of form-following functions. He certainly utilized the acoustical engineers and their expertise to make sure that this stage was going to provide the best acoustics and design parameters that Donna was giving them in terms of where we're trying to have the music and announcements or whatever from the stage go to and where not to. So the design does have a function beyond its own architecture. So the sweep of the roof was part of that, the flanking of the stage with two structures. And as I mentioned, we have the green room on the south side and the electrical room on the north side. When you get done, you look at something like this and there really is a lot of work going into it, but it looks fairly simple. I don't think the renderings they're certainly not finalized, and they don't reflect a lot of the things that will be going on with respect to landscaping, for example, or the richness of the materials. But from an overall form point of view, this is the form that we're looking at. There's a lot of debate about whether the stairs should project out from the stage. There's a lot of concern about, access of audience to the stage. What you're seeing here, and it's kind of hard to tell, but you can look at the plan on this one. There's something, it's called a promontory, kind of like what you might think of like a catwalk. So there is an opportunity for the stage to kind of project out, and in Donna speaking with a lot of her bands, they really like that plan. So this has been vetted not only through the architect, the acoustical engineer, but a lot of her bands reviewed this. We got to the right size for the green room, right size for access off the back and storage and so forth. So this will provide opportunity, obviously, through the summer months, but it also provides opportunities for casual seating and other events in the winter as well. So we have thought about it year-round. And then with the support building, we're also looking at, somewhat of a reflection of that same shape roof, so we have a continuity of design. It's more of a modern design. It's been warmed up again by the stonework on the knee wall. It does have a dramatic look with the floor-to-ceiling windows. What's pretty cool on the west side of the support building, that'll be an overhead door that will open up. And then the outdoor area we're going to keep for like VIP use, for during the bands, or for outdoor use when we rent this space for birthday parties or different kinds of activities that can be done. Staff really provided a lot of input on this, and I think it resulted in a very attractive building that is also very functional with what Donna's going to need. You'll see in the floor plan here that we're providing almost a 500 square foot multi-purpose room that, again, she can program for birthday parties or meetings, or on a event night, this could be where the VIPs are at, pay a premium. She's very excited about the storage room that's on the north side, which is, so is Public Works, so we don't have to haul a lot of things back and forth from the Public Works garage. Office for security as well as for her use, and then the restrooms on the southeast side. The northeast side is just a switchgear that we need a 20 by 20 space for all the transformer and the switchgear for the facility. And then, so in these two items, we really would like, a little discussion or a little, I guess a preference from you all on how you're feeling, the direction we're going. If you feel this is something that, in terms of the basic thesis of incorporating some of the materials and some of the colors from the train station, if you like the direction that we're going. There's still going to be some refinement of details on this. That's not at all the final rendering. But I think in terms of general form, this is what we're locking into. And in terms of amount of space that it's going to command on the site plan, this is pretty set. We have a meeting tomorrow morning, for example, trying to finalize the site plan, because again, all this is kind of a domino effect. We need to lock in that site plan so that our engineers can get all those underground utilities taken care of and all their electrical needs and so forth. So I'm curious to see how you feel.
I
about
do like the
architecture.
colors.
Yeah, that stone.
Stone's pretty.
Cindy, is what you see on the station, or a little
got that
similar. He
same
talked about
texture?
maybe making it smaller.
It's got that same texture that the.
Same texture. He's actually, thought I had one in this report. Yeah, again, it's kind of hard to say, but if you look at the little square up in here, that's what the architect has given us. So it's not going to be exactly as much of a cut face as it is on the station, but it will reflect the intent of that material.
And then the brick would be similar to the brick that's on the train station?
Yeah, there is no brick.
I'm looking at the support
Oh,
building.
that's actually wood.
Oh, it's wood?
It's actually wood.
Okay.
Although we've had some, we've had more discussions about even integrating some metal work into that. So that's left for another discussion. We're going to follow up on that tomorrow. But I think it's safe to say where you see stone is where you're going to see stone. The wood could still be up for discussion. The general color palette will be as you see there.
Looks very mid-century modern, and it does reflect the colors of the train station, so I like both of those.
I think the outdoor space will be very nice. Donna and I had fun doing some research on the internet of, a green wall. That stone wall will have a trellis, will have a vine growing up it on the north side there. And then what it's supposed to reflect off the side here is kind of a living wall. I don't know if you've seen those. We have succulents
it's
built
really
into the
nice.
wall.
They are cool.
Very cool.
Yeah, I like it
Okay.
a lot. Yep.
Okay. So I'll report that back to the committee, and then we'll continue to refine. Again, as we do these things, obviously it affects the budget, and so we'll be getting those numbers back for you. Regarding schedule, we're still on track, working towards a bid letting in February. Our hope is that, again, as we refine our budgets and so forth, that we'll get our bid letting out and then have a bidding process with some sort of award, opening on the 24th, and award by the village board in March. And that sets us up perfectly for a spring groundbreaking. And budget, like I mentioned, we continue to track those. We had a meeting, the village manager was with us earlier, and he wanted to make sure that we're keeping our eyes on that consulting fee, and we are. I track all the Lakota invoices, and Colby tracks all the Christopher Burke. And so we're at 20, I think I have it in here. Yes, 28% on the Lakota invoices of their total budget of $407,000, and Christopher Burke is at 17.9% of their $288,000 budget. So we're on track. Donna will be working, we have the capital budget coming up, and as well as the operational budget for next year as well. So I've been very impressed with the work that she's been doing on the operational budget. It's mammoth. And as she works through that, then that'll be going through the typical budget process for your review coming down the road. You mentioned the result of the survey and the hockey, and it was kind of a shock to us as well. And Donna, I don't know if you want to speak on it, but we will be talking with the consultant tomorrow about maybe entertaining a pared down hockey
Ice rink.
rink. You know, that's the beauty of the rental. Remember when I brought that question to you before? That's really the beauty of this. So we certainly have an opportunity to look at different options of what that size of the hockey rink would be, and then, kind of test the market. She's been doing tons of research. I don't know if you want to comment.
I have, we've been reaching out to several communities that are doing these city centers throughout the country and getting some very good feedback on the programming and amenities. And considering, like Paula said, that hockey came back low, we may want to look at right-sizing this rink based on what our needs are, offering ourselves the opportunity to expand later if we want to. If we determine that that need is there, we can certainly expand at a further, a date in the future. So there,
Yeah.
to offer hockey, there would be some considerable expense with all the netting and the boards and everything that we'd have to do. So we may want to walk before we run. So that's the
Yeah.
direction we're leaning right
Yeah,
now.
I'm so glad we rented.
Yeah, the scale of this impacts so much. I mean, even just the infrastructure, the chillers, we could cut our chiller cost in half going to a smaller one.
Right.
So we'll have a good discussion tomorrow and trying to decide what the appropriate thing is. Our engineers are kind of biting at the bit because they've been sitting here waiting for us to make these final decisions so they can lay all that groundwork. So that's tomorrow's key. So we'll get some decisions made, and then I'll come back to you next month and tell you where we are.
Was there any discussion about a ribbon of any kind for the ice rink?
That was one of the earlier concepts.
Yeah, I forgot where we left off, so.
Yeah, it was one of the first concepts, and, for a variety of reasons, probably one of the biggest things resulting when we went to Valparaiso and saw the income that can be derived from actual rental of the rink for hockey use and so forth.
Right, having a full-size rink offers us a little more flexibility of things that we can offer, be it youth programs or whatever else, versus just the ribbon, which tends to be a little bit more limited. So we
Yeah.
moved more in the direction of a rink.
Do you want to mention the work you're doing with the Park District on that a little bit?
Sure, that we have been having continual meetings with the Park District to get some feedback from them. We anticipate them, as I may have mentioned at a previous meeting, anticipate them being a good partner for us with regard to the exercise activities that we're talking about hosting, as well as the skating. So,
Classes, training,
right, youth programs, et
skating
cetera.
classes.
So
We
they're at the
reached out
table with us.
to the local hockey clubs to see their appetite
They
for
have
outdoor?
there is an appetite for it. The challenge is that we can make more money from actual bodies on the ice for general admission, more so than we can for the hourly
Yeah.
rate. So that's where we're trying to figure out where that cost-benefit analysis is really
Gotcha.
going to lead us.
Sometimes they don't play so well together.
Maybe it's just so
Yeah.
competitive with hockey here, it's opposed to Valparaiso, there's not like, there's not a hockey team in
Right.
Indiana, and
The
here we
biggest
have
challenge- right.
the rink on 104th Avenue, there's a
Crestwood.
triple rink there, there's Southwest, I mean, there's a lot here as
Right.
opposed to there, so.
Definitely.
It's just so hard. I mean, we said that when we were trying to decide, and that's why we were so well advised to rent, because I think we got
Yes,
a lot
very
of
much
testing,
so.
a lot of testing to do.
Yeah, I'm so happy for that.
So thank you for your feedback. We'll move on these plans, and then I'll let you know how the site planning goes.
So one more question. From the Gantt chart, it says we'll be done with the design by the 8th. Is that still holding in November?
Yeah, as far as I know, we'll find out tomorrow.
Okay.
I think we'll have to see how much the ice rink plays into it. Hopefully not changing that much, but I've been writing them pretty hard on the schedule, so.
Okay.
Is
So
it
everything kind of cascades from there, right?
It does. It's been like.
Yeah.
Is the movie screen still in the?
Uh-huh,
Yes.
definitely, on the stage. It wouldn't be projected on that wood background, it would be actually another
Something that would
screen.
come down.
Screen that would come down. As well as the light show, which is something our marketing branding commission feels strongly about, as you probably recall, is the ability to kind of set and forget and have something that we
Right.
have built in maybe every evening.
I think it's real interesting when we get this site plan to you, that you almost want to walk out there, because I've just learned through planning for the years, you look at something on paper, and you just get really amazed to actually the scale of things when you change out there. So it'll be kind of fun, maybe we can even stake some things out for you, so you can start to get an idea of what it would look like.
Looking forward to it. All right, thank you. Item number 6, discuss adult use cannabis plan. I don't know that this one, I don't know who's talking to
I'm
this
going
one.
to, I'm going to take this
All
one.
right, okay.
I am, because a couple meetings ago, I believe you were looking for some opportunities to gather information while you're trying to make your decision on the zoning restrictions pertaining to licensed cultivation centers and craft growers and processing, dispensaries, et cetera. And so we put together a plan that would offer you what we believe a good opportunity to gather and present information, go out to the community and solicit input, and then provide that data back to you. And so what we'd like to recommend is that we create a dedicated webpage on the website where we would host all of our FAQs, survey links, previous committee discussions, everything would be hosted there. And we have a presentation at the committee of the whole that would be primarily information-based. So that would have everybody coming and actually making a presentation to you at the November 5th meeting, where we would have, finance share information, community development, again, very information-based. And then we would like to create a survey that is included in this packet that you see, that we would push out through all of our channels and gather as much information as we can from the community through that survey mechanism. And if you are interested in casting a wider net, we provided a couple options for you. If you wanted to put something either in the junction, as we note, several people are getting information from there. So just, again, to direct people to a link on the website so that they can easily access the survey. We could put a postcard out in the mail, but there's a considerable expense for doing that. But the objective, again, to cast a wider net than just the people who are engaged with us right now. And put all that information together for you with the intention that we would keep the survey open through like the 22nd, somewhere right before Thanksgiving, and then tabulate all of the results and bring them to you at the December 3rd board meeting. And enough time for you to make a decision at the December 17th board meeting.
Sounds good.
Just a couple of additional comments. I really think we could probably get the newspapers to, not only doing that, but probably even do a story on this. So, if you want to spend the money on the postcards, that's fine. It's a lot of money. I didn't think it was necessary either. So the November 13th is an off Tuesday. There are the other committees scheduled that night. I talked to Trustee Glass as the co-chair, and he's fine with doing it that night. We'd actually also like to do, in closed session, there's interviews for a position that we're looking to hire. So we thought we kind
Which day is that?
It's Tuesday the 13th. It's not
November
normally
12th?
What, it'd be the 12th?
12.
12th, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, okay. 12th, yeah.
So that's a committee of the whole?
Well, it typically would just be a committee night for.
Right, it's not our night to meet. So how is the other team going to be apprised of this I think we should defer this until, let them, the ad and legal department, review these aspects of the marketing plan. I'd like to make a motion to defer
Well,
till they all see it. I don't think they've,
if we do that. we're
what
gonna-
you've provided us, they haven't seen.
No, but we could certainly.
Hold on.
send that to them.
Did
Part of the
you
reason why
make a
we're trying to
motion?
do-
Yes, I did.
Motion there.
Okay, we have to bring up the motion then. So, is there gonna be any movement on that motion by anybody?
I'm not sure yet, because we're trying to just make sure, you're just worried that the other group
They
is
haven't
not
seen all
going
the stuff
to-
that you and I just are looking at here, and I'm just deferring to them. On the 13th or 12th, their meeting, they can,
Well, this is just on the cannabis issue.
This is,
Yes.
this is to set this is the public, how do we want to get public input? So we're not looking for any decisions on cannabis regulations, but how do we get public input? And so we have to decide, in the next couple of months, whether we're going to opt out and opt in. And then
Right.
there was a desire, I think, at the last board meeting to do a public input session. So this was our recommendation on how to do it,
Do it.
kind of how to publicize it, so that's why.
yeah, I just want them to do their own on the 12th, like we're just doing ours.
I'll second the motion.
On to ad
But-
and legal.
I think we can do that at the cow on the 5th and give them opportunity to have this special committee meeting on the 12th.
Okay.
Um,
All right,
It
hold
would
on,
just
hold
give
on
us
here.
limited time to publicize it, though, if we do it.
made your motion.
I made my motion.
The motion has been seconded.
Yes.
Were you trying to amend that motion?
No, just trying to
No.
discuss.
Okay, now we need to vote on your motion. And your motion was to defer this to what date?
November 12th, ad and legal committee for the other three members of the commission, the committee to review the same information that we're getting on what to do about.
Okay, so let's,
So,
we'll take,
all in favor? Aye. Those opposed?
Nay.
I think I'm opposed for a second, because I'm still confused. I thought November 5th was where we're going to have them come in here and present to us. Present information, gather information. Is that correct, or?
So November 12th is when we're looking at having a public input session. So where we're gonna invite people to come to the meeting and offer it.
Okay, so what was the 5th?
I thought it was the 5th. You sent me an email today, you wanted to do it on the
Yeah,
5th.
I mean,
No, I thought we were gonna do all that. We're gonna have a public input.
so you're saying.
Same night that we're gonna have.
I was saying.
We could do
add
the
and
5th or the
legal
12th,
to what we're
whichever.
looking
Yeah.
at. Give them a
The
chance
The
to
5th is
see
the
what we're
standing board
seeing.
meeting, the 12th would be a
It's like
separate.
a liquor thing. It's
Yeah,
like-
we're
Oh,
gonna
yeah.
have a presentation.
Everybody's gotta be
We're
present.
gonna
Yeah,
meet,
and not just
police
like us.
chief,
Now
Why
I'm
thought they
saying-
had
And
to
then
come
let
in
people
for it?
kind
I
of
thought it
see.
was like everybody's being.
There's an input. there's a
No, I just wanted to give it to ad and legal to let them look at same aspects that we're looking at now.
We haven't seen anything yet. I mean, we're gonna
Well,
see
you
it
see
on
the,
there.
this,
The only concern might be the timing.
well, she
Being able
just
to
went
get
over the
survey out.
marketing, she just went over,
Oh, I thought we were talking about the cannabis. Are we
It
talking
is.
about everything, or
she's
was
talking about a
just-
survey to be sent out, and
We're talking, let me just recap, that we're talking about having a meeting, either the 5th or the 12th, where we would have basically an information gathering meeting that would be recorded and be made available, and then we would push out that survey with the access to the information to the community, so that they have access to the information and can make an educated response on the survey.
Is it just on the subject of cannabis, or the entire survey we just went through?
No, just cannabis.
Just cannabis.
This is
So
what
just about
trustee
cannabis
Brennan
stuff.
brought up at the last board
Right,
meeting.
Right.
right?
Correct.
So,
So don't you think he'd want to look at everything we just looked at?
I know that he has.
And Brady, is that illegal?
I
Should
do
it
not
go
know
through
about
there?
Brady.
I mean,
I'm confused. This is just about the cannabis. We
Okay.
haven't seen
it's
anything on
about
it
the
yet.
marketing.
Yeah, all this is really, so, one, we're kind of on a timetable because we have to decide whether we're gonna opt in or opt out.
By
I think by the end of the year, right?
Mhm.
Correct. Yeah.
December 31st.
Yeah, so basically, you know, the board at the last, we were on a track where we were going to initially have a meeting on the 5th to discuss, do we want to move forward with the ordinances? Then at, I think it was the last meeting, trustee Brennan suggested, before we do that, let's get public input, let's have some speakers come to the meeting and talk about, you know, have the village attorney talk about the presentation he made, the police department, and to kind of do a presentation on, you know, the pros and cons of it,
Mhm.
and then gather input. So that's why we were trying to, we're trying to do it on the 12th, because honestly, if we don't do it on the 12th, the week after that, you've got your strategic planning, and then if we, it's really going to be a tight timetable if we wait until December. So that's why.
The week after
So
that's
this is-
Thanksgiving.
So,
Well, we can make it on, the 26th is available also for us, for our
I
committee.
think there was an issue that somebody,
I'm out.
We could do a committee of the whole on the 26th.
I think there was an issue, we canceled some meetings, I think because somebody else was out, so,
We moved him to the next week
Yeah,
because
that's
I'm
the
on
holiday
vacation.
week.
That's Thanksgiving week.
yeah.
so is there an admin legal on the 12th?
Yes,
There is.
that's
But
why
again, if
I
you-
said they can look at it then, and then we can have the committee the whole week after. Once they look it over, I mean, maybe they don't like these ideas. It's like the liquor license, I feel like.
Well, yeah, everybody should be.
Ad and legal should be involved.
Well,
Whatever.
again, this is just, the reason why I presented this committee was just really how we want to gather input. So, I mean, if you want admin and legal to look at it, that means you're probably putting this, the actual meeting off till December.
Well, what's
So,
wrong
which
with
means
the,
You're gonna have to pass something probably.
what's wrong with the 19th, a call before?
Because you've got strategic planning that night.
That's that whole night,
Right,
late
that's
night
the whole
thing.
And the 26th, there's some vacancies, I think some people are gone.
And the
So-
recommendation would be to keep a survey open at probably 2 weeks, just to allow people enough time to respond.
So we could do it on the 12th. The meeting.
What about if can I just send this to the committee members and just ask them to review it? I mean, if they have some ideas on how we can improve it,
Yes, I mean, that's the whole point. They should review everything as well. I mean,
well, and okay, it's fine, but can I just do that by just sending them an email with this idea here and ask them to give us input within the week?
Yeah, can you follow that up with a phone call?
Yeah,
To make
I'll
sure
just-
that,
so we know that they're
Yeah.
satisfied with
Yeah.
what they're looking at as well, and the speakers that are coming in and what's happening.
Okay,
I can do that,
that's
yeah.
interesting, for them to have time to.
Review
decide.
the, putting it in the junction, the postcards, I mean,
We're not doing the postcard.
yeah, well, we don't know, they
Well, I
may
think-
want that.
Yeah, it's
We
good.
don't want.
It's not
the
fair to
postcards
us.
were out,
Right.
Yeah.
I didn't like them, but there's, I'm not the only person here.
no, I don't like the
agree with
postcard.
that. I agree.
I don't think it's gonna be a
No, I know
worthwhile.
Trustee Brennan called me today, he actually had read this, he didn't like the postcard. I know, other than that, he didn't have any comments, so I just really need to talk to.
Okay.
Okay, and then we'll,
And then we're
Then
officially
he'll put it
canceled
on.
on the 26th then, apparently, right?
Yes.
For the
Yeah,
three of
'cause
us?
there
Okay.
was some conflicts, I thought, with somebody here, but I
Hey,
don't remember.
Thank you for accommodating my schedule.
Anytime.
Dave, if we push that back, will we have enough time to have a public hearing if we do go ahead with the zoning on this then? I think that's a consideration we need to make sure of, because if this is something the village wants to move forward, we have to change our zoning ordinance as well, and we'll have to have a public hearing on that. Have we started looking at our timelines for the public hearing on the zoning aspect of this yet? No?
It was
Okay.
a little
Let's just be
unclear in the
mindful of-
packet, but was the zoning, I thought it was gonna be presented as well.
Well,
I didn't know if,
I guess, my understanding is that we gotta take action if we wanted to opt out,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
So, I mean, it's just, if there's ordinance that needs to be approved, my understanding, and you can check with Pat, was that
No, you're
there was no
correct.
action, if the village wanted to allow them, they could basically pass an ordinance after the first year.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
only if you didn't want, if you wanted to opt out of the state requirements, then you need to decide by January first.
I believe there was some tax laws that had to take place
Well,
in
tax
December.
laws is different, I mean, that technically had happened by September 30th, I will tell you, getting up back, they're trying to extend that in the veto session,
Okay,
but we've actually already passed that deadline.
Okay.
And we talked about that, we thought, well, that's really not even that important to us at this point.
Yeah.
We need to make the right
That's what we
decision
wanted.
first,
okay.
so.
Yeah, the tax question was premature before
Yeah,
everything
yeah,
else
yeah,
came up.
it was- yeah, so.
Okay. All right, so the motion does not carry then to,
Yeah,
you were no then.
It was 1-1
Get
and it-
feedback.
Okay.
sorry, I just didn't, I
No,
wanted
that's okay.
to, I didn't understand what you were.
That's fine, we just gotta continue on. All right then.
So the guidance is clear. We all
I think
don't
the
like
guidance
the
is clear now.
postcards. And
Yeah.
we did like the newspaper
Mhm.
and social media. And then I like the website, I like the survey, I thought those were great ideas, so. The only thing I was worried about on the survey is what we're gonna do with those results, because these tend to be very polarizing subjects. So we're gonna get a lot of positive and a lot of negative, and I think it's gonna be difficult to interpret that and make decisions based on it, but
We tried to keep the question somewhat simple for
Right.
that, but I mean, you're absolutely right. You're going to have, you always say, don't ask a question you don't want an answer to, you're going to get it.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. It's gonna be confusing because it is now illegal and it is a state law. It is allowable and it's not a criminal offense, so,
Mhm.
ask it, maybe the survey, I don't know if it is a good idea all the way. I mean,
I
like
can
you
go
said, it's
either
gonna be
way.
polarizing.
Well, I can go either way on the survey, but the one thing I didn't like was the note cards during the public meeting. I don't think we should explore that with the, what's the word I'm looking for, the OMA stuff. I don't think we want to jeopardize anything there.
Yeah. But you wanted, the survey you want to do, or, I mean, the survey was just to make sure we're getting more opinions than whatever number of people
Right.
show up here.
I'm okay with it. I think you're only going to get the people that want it a lot or don't want it a lot to do the survey, though. And so we can certainly hear those opinions. I don't think it's a very expensive thing, right?
No, not at all. There's no expense.
It was
Yep.
good. Everybody wanted it.
Yeah, I know. just want the other half to get the,
No, I agree.
I'm not sure what the board is on it.
Well, I think we need to.
That was all I had on that.
I didn't want to hear from speakers myself, you know.
But yeah, well, obviously, we do. There's 3 other people missing.
Yeah.
All right, with that, I think we're settled. Receive comments from the public. The only sole survivor over there, thank you. I'd like to adjourn the meeting of the marketing committee.
So
Do I
moved?
have a- no.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Brad, you want to go next?
Number 2.
Or
Oh.
Yeah, you're with Brad.
whatever you want to do.
You want to
Want
go?
me to? Okay. I'd like to open the Finance Committee meeting at 7:20. And we have a quorum with trustee Berg and trustee Mueller present. The first item, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the minutes from the special committee meeting held on September 24th.
So move.
Seconded?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That carries. And Brad, would you like to go over the September financial results?
Sure, thank you. You have in your packets, and it was distributed earlier, the report, revenue report, or monthly report for September, which is the 5th month of the fiscal year. Again, the narrative memo in the front kind of highlights some of our key revenue sources. Sales taxes reported in the month of September were actually for sales made back in June. Again, the trend has continued in a downward direction, but still pretty close to similar to last year. Down about 29,000 this month compared to the same time last year, and 197,000 round figures year to date. That was about 2% down for the month and 3% down year to date. As I've noted, 9 of the last 10 months have reflected lower sales. That, again, continues to be a little bit of a concern. We continue to monitor our economy. The home rule sales tax has trended similarly, and obviously it will do that, being that it's 0.75% on most of the same items that are taxed for the regular 1% sales tax that we receive. We received $564,000 for the month compared to $579,000 last year at the same time. It was down about $15,000 for the month and $25,000 year to date. Down just shy of 3% for the month and down 1% for the year. Still continues to track about 41% of the regular sales tax. Again, the home rule does not apply to title goods such as vehicle sales, which is again a large part of our sales tax base, nor does it apply to food and drugs. Use tax, we receive on a per capita basis from the state. That has been continuing to track upwards slightly from comparable period last year. For the month, we received $150,000 compared to $137,000 last year, up about just shy of $14,000 or 10% change. Year to date, $738,000 received compared to $627,000 last year, up almost 18%. And again, a big factor in that was the Supreme Court decision with regard to the Wayfair case that has now got more entities reporting sales, use tax, sales tax to the state. So the pie is, the pool is a little larger for the distributions. Income tax for the month, this was shared, sales tax, or I'm sorry, income tax is collected in August. We get a share of that from the state. August is not a major collection month, so the dollars are small. I would say almost flat for the month, down $10,000 comparative to last year, 3% down. Year to date, we are up almost 18%, with $2.7 million received through September compared to $2.3 million last year. Property taxes, a lot of narrative there explaining the property tax structures. but have been, not a lot of changes there, and our analysis indicates that we are very much on track with our property tax collections. Video gaming continues to reflect an upward trend. Revenues were up 6.6% for the month and 9% year-to-date. We have, at the end of the month, or for the September reporting period, was 32 active locations with 145 gaming devices. We have four entities that have been licensed by the state that are not included in operations, or not necessarily, and some of them not necessarily approved, and 2 of them are still in a pending state with the gaming board. Motor fuel taxes, September reporting was for August collections. Again, motor fuel taxes in general have reflected a downward trend for some time. Was down almost $20,000 for the month compared to last year, which was a 16% change. And year to date, we received $580,000 compared to $611,000 at the same point in time last year, down about $31,000 or down 5%. September was the first month of receiving a distribution from the increased motor fuel taxes that the state imposed July 1st. We received $84,000 from that. Obviously not quite a doubling of the regular sales tax. And it carries the same restrictions as to how those monies can be spent. We have in the past dedicated our motor fuel tax to our pavement management program, and I would anticipate us doing the same with the transportation renewal fund. Commuter parking, stable. Actually, September was up. The daily use was up nearly 5% in September compared to the same time last year. And year to date, about a 1% increase. The next part of the report is your graphic dashboards, reflecting graphically most of the information that I just covered here with sales taxes, property taxes, and general fund revenues overall. And motor fuel taxes, the hotel tax, commuter parking revenues, and water and sewer fund revenues. The next slide bank is comparative of revenue and expense. And as I like to point out, is the fact that the spread between the revenues and expenses have remained fairly consistent. That we're not seeing any issues with regard to either revenues not coming in as expected or expenses increasing more than we expected. The trend line graphs, you've got the series of those, property taxes showing how cyclical our collections are, tied with getting monies basically twice a year. Sales tax continuing on an upward trend. The home rule sales tax again on an upward trend. Income tax almost flat, but again you can see a lot of variation from month to month based on when the state receives tax collections. The use tax again on an upward trend, as I talked about earlier. Amusement tax on a slight upward trend, again largely driven by the music theater, which has had a very successful season this year, with probably one of the largest roster of shows that we've had since its opening. Motor fuel tax, again, you can see the slight downward trend there. Hotel tax on an upward trend, and obviously as we have continued interest in additional hotels, that will continue on an upward trend. Now we get into the more traditional presentations of revenues, comparison to last year, a little more detail, and then a summary of the general fund departmental, by departmental, the expenditures. Again, the summary on the water and sewer revenues, commuter parking lot revenues, additional information on the revenues that we receive from the state on a per capita basis. And then finally, a recap of the impact fees that we have collected on behalf of other governments, which is somewhere just shy of $22 million that we have collected over our lifetime. And that concludes the September financial report.
Thank you, Brad.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brad.
Thank you.
Questions,
No?
comments? Okay. Okay. All right. Comments from the public? Jim? Nothing? Okay. Then I'd like to make a motion to close the finance committee meeting.
So move?
Seconded?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries.
Roll right into the next one. Time is now 7:30. I'd like to call the regular October 22nd, 2019 Community Development Committee meeting to order. Present this evening are my fellow board members, Trustee Galante and Trustee Berg. We have quorum. Item number 2, do we have a motion to consider approval of the minutes of the regular Community Development Committee held on September 24th, 2019?
So move?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Item number 3, Kimberly to give an update on the Oak Park Avenue grant program.
Thank you. I just wanted to let the group know the status of the discussions that have been happening at ECC as we are working through the grants and getting some feedback. So this is a kind of an update for you all. So any of these effects of these changes to the grants would be taking effect in the next budget cycle. We anticipate that. One of the items we wanted to address in the grant program is the attendance for the applicants. And we do feel it is an important that these applicants are at least at the ECC as a minimum, and that they also are going to the village board or the committee meetings. So they were proposing to add a mandatory attendance requirement. And there was a suggestion that if the grant was maybe under a certain amount, the smaller grants, that only the ECC meeting would be necessary, and that any other grants, we would be looking to have their attendance at all meetings. So that was a discussion point. I think the attendance at ECC is valid because that's where a lot of the discussion happens, and sometimes when the applicant isn't there, staff does their best to know all the intricate details, but sometimes things come up that only the applicant can really answer. So I think that's a good recommendation. The next big recommendation was looking at the requirement for the business plan for the grants, and that the discussion led to whether or not it's required for all grants to have a business plan or go through the consulting process with the Governor's State Community College Small Business Development Center, or SCORE. The ECC decided only to require a business plan for the retail grants, and that also a retail grant applicant may have the ability to waive the business plan requirement based upon previous business experience. So the retail grant made sense because you're investing specifically into a business, so you wanted to make sure that that business is really putting their best foot forward, doing the research, and make sure they have a solid plan. A lot of the other grants are more structural and are going to be staying with the building. Regardless if the business is successful or not, those improvements are still there. So that was the recommendation for the business plan requirement. Some discussion came out of that too. A lot of people that are applying for loans or working through a small business loan, specifically for retail, they are already going to be hopefully providing them a business plan, so it shouldn't be too difficult for them to produce that for us. The next item was timeline for projects. We've had a couple of projects come through, get their grants approved, and then they've decided to put their grants on hold. But we've then tied up that money, so it eliminates the ability for possibly other people that are willing to move forward in a time frame within the budget. So they did want to put a time frame in, so they have, once their grant is approved, they have 3 months to get their plans into the Community Development Department, obtain their building permits, and then 12 months have that completed with final inspections. And all grants, we're looking to have them submit a timeline that we can try to hold them to. But always, there's going to be circumstances in the event that they might have to exceed the 12-month timeline, and that we could look for extensions at the village board for those. The timelines begin once the village board approves the applicant's grant, and there were no other recommendations proposed by ECC regarding suggested timelines. They thought this was a good timeline, and we're trying to work within the budget cycle too, so that helps with budgeting for the grants. The capping of the grants was a big discussion. The discussion led to some alternatives to how they can cap the grants. How could they possibly look at this for a per project basis versus a per parcel basis? Right now, it's a business per year can require or ask for on a grant. And therefore, there was some discussion about that. Ultimately, they came around to the final. They felt that they wanted to not eliminate the possibility for someone who does want to continue to make improvements to the property to be capped at a fixed amount forever. So I know this does differ from some of the comments we received from the village board, which we made them aware too of where this discussion was going, but this was their final decision, that they still felt that they didn't want to hinder somebody to make improvements in a phased approach and limit some projects. That was their position on that. What we're still left for discussion is the landscaping grants. Basically, initially at our last meeting, we did talk about potentially eliminating those and putting money towards the other grants that we felt were adding more value, but it was decided that they still will want to evaluate that and just evaluate it for one more year potentially and determine at a later time if we want to eliminate that or modify it. There's been discussions about a bonus incentive. There's a few members that felt that we should be looking to incentivize people who utilize grants, that if they utilize a local contractor, that they would be able to get an increased bonus amount. But we were looking for some legal interpretation if that is allowable. So that was something they thought if we legally could do that, they wanted to give some bonus to any of those that use a local contractor. In that discussion, we recognize that that might be difficult for a lot of folks, but that's why it's a bonus. Some other details to that I had asked would be, you know, if you have a project like a facade grant, you have multiple contractors. So, you know, at what point is, if you have 5 out of the 10 contractors, they're local, do you get the bonus? So I think what's really hinging on this is whether or not we can legally do this and then work through our attorneys on that. The clawback discussion is reserved for the November 11th meeting. They'd like to continue to have that conversation on the clawbacks. Initially, the thought was the clawbacks would only be for the retail grants, but they want to continue that discussion, and staff is continuing researching other communities' ways on how they handle that as well. The big thing is getting the owner involved, because if you have a tenant who applied for the grant and they leave, you initially are then looking to put that clawback on the owner of the property. And are we hurting the property owner more so? They lose a tenant, and then in addition, they have to pay the difference. But it's not uncommon that there's clawbacks. We just need to further discuss it some more. Then we wanted to give you all a summary of where the grants are as of today, and what we have issued and what is earmarked. So we have earmarked funds of a total of $209,093. So we had a beginning balance of $350. We have paid out only $10,229. We have some earmarked projects at $209,093, which leaves us a remaining fund of $130,678.
Thank you, Kimberly. Do you guys want to go through one by one and just provide any feedback?
Sure.
Does that sound good? Otherwise, I don't want to bounce all over the place, if that's okay. So the applicant attendance, does that seem reasonable to you guys?
That I don't, doesn't matter.
I think it's very helpful for the ECC to have questions answered on the spot. And I'm really thankful that they did all this hard work and thorough analysis for us as well. And they understand the proven, aspects of having these grants for the community. It's only fair that the person be there and
Yeah, I agree.
respond
should
immediately,
wanna be
like,
there.
okay,
Yeah.
these are important grants to our village. They really do enhance the downtown area, and the ECC appreciates that, and you can tell by everything that they've written.
And then, did you guys have a thought on the minimum amount before they wouldn't require attendance? I'm of the opinion it should be pretty low.
I mean, I would think somebody coming and asking for a grant should show up. I mean, I think it's kind of insane that we have to force them to come. I think they would want to come. And I think they should take that into consideration if people aren't even bothering to come. I just don't want to make it so, so many things into this that it's difficult to manage,
I think the thought process where they're going with that too, this might evolve, is that they are thinking about grants that are under a certain amount if they meet all the criteria. Because they're trying to look at how do we help expedite some of these grants, because the timeline has been what we've received as kind of being a barrier for some folks. So signed grants are a really simple process, and they were thinking if that could just maybe be done more so, where if it gets reviewed, it meets the criteria, we could maybe look at that more administratively or going straight to a village board meeting. So that's kind
Yeah.
of where that discussion was leading.
The sign, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, you clearly could see it.
Yeah.
They aren't that expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I think the specific example that brought the applicant attendance was a facade grant that was then going to be a
Yeah.
code grant
On top.
followed up of it. And
Yeah.
It was, the questions it would have helped the process along if the applicant was there. So maybe we can make that an administrative decision. Does that sound better to you, Diane?
Sure.
So the business plan requirement, did we have a number of years in business that we just waive that?
But here's my problem with that, it's like SIP. This is not anything to do with his pizza business. This is a brand-new business. And there should have been a business plan that was provided for that. I mean, how do we even, I feel like we're giving out a lot of taxpayer money. We're giving out their money, and it's a big risk. And if we're not even asking them to do anything, it's just without a business plan to make sure it's even doable.
Was that one?
I'm not sure what you're
familiar
talking
with that
about
one.
pizza plan.
Well, I'm talking about SIP, I mean, because SIP has Salinas.
Oh,
And they
okay,
said,
okay.
well, he didn't need to do a business plan because he's been in business. Was in the pizza business. That's completely different than what he's doing. To me, this is a very risky opportunity. Hopefully it's kicks off and it's very successful, but it's brand new for our village. And I would hope that we would have made him do a business plan.
I thought that he did. Was that correct, Kimberly?
No, he did not do
And that brings
Did
me
not
to
do
the
one.
other part
Okay.
is that we're checking, I want to see some changes on our forms. I want somebody to sign off that who took the business plan, because people you get this application and it's checked. And then when you ask questions on it, we don't have this or we don't have that, then I get concerned that, okay, why did somebody check that? I think there has to be more accountability. We have to have somebody's got to sign it. Is it, who checks, who's checking off this stuff? It should be what date they brought it in. I mean, we're very loose on everything with this whole grant. Like, when I ask some questions, it's unclear of what date exactly are you saying that it starts? What's it kickoff for the 3-month time period? I mean, there has to be more
I think
meat
that'll
in
be
this
on the
stuff,
next one.
.
So the business, and that was a retail grant, retail build-out?
Right, so really, the only business plan requirement would be for a retail grant, and that it could be waived at the discretion if they've had some previous business experience.
So
Who
you
makes
want
that
them to be
decision?
established at that business before we consider waiving it?
Yeah, well, I
I
would
think
like to know
Jay Walsh,
who's gonna
the
make the
ECC was
decision
making
to
that
waive it.
decision.
I mean, I'm not comfortable with the ECC
I
deciding
don't
that
think
they
the
don't need
ECC
to
made
do
that
something.
decision.
No. It's
No.
I mean, if we're gonna decide that somebody doesn't have to do something, it should be a board decision. If we're gonna change, if our process says this, I don't believe that we should then give the person, okay, but we can override it and just waive these things. To me, that's,
So you want to keep the governor, state, community, and the score?
I don't know about the governor and state community, but I think they should present a business plan. You're asking us to give out $70,000 in tax, or whatever it is, in taxpayers' money. I think we should have some control over how we're giving it out.
For the retail grant, I agree. If they're gonna
Yeah,
be
I
a new
agree with
business in
retail.
Tinley, they
I
should.
think
be
that's all
required.
it was on, was the retail grant.
Well-
The SIP was a code compliance and a facade. Those were both
Oh.
physical to the structure. Those were not.
He didn't apply for the
Well,
retail.
then how did he get over $100,000? Because that wouldn't add up.
He came back for, it was a co-compliance. He came back for the facade. It was a retail build-out and a facade. So it was a retail build-out co-compliance at first, and he came back for the facade. That's for the siding, remember, he came back for that. And the discussion that was had was that, at the time, I guess, they didn't think he needed a business plan because he was already an established business. It was an extension of his business, at least that's what I was told the interpretation was, so.
And who
Extension of his
gave
new
that?
business.
Who gave that interpretation?
That was Patrick Hoban.
See, that, that really bothers me, because as a board, we believe these things are being done. And then people are waiving things, and then they're not being done. And it bothers me a lot when I go pull something or ask for something, and it's not what it's supposed to be.
So I think for the retail, we should establish a number of years established at that place that's gonna get the retail build out to have a business plan. For the facade and the
If he
code
was
compliance.
enlarging his current business, I agree.
Yeah,
We would,
Yeah.
doesn't need a business plan, he's in business.
right.
He's never done this kind of business here.
Is that clear enough?
Yep, okay.
The project completion, the timelines?
I like that. I
They
like
seem
that a lot.
reasonable.
But again, I think our forums need to have dates and more detail. Who's taking these items? What's the date that it starts? And I've asked about reporting on this too. I'd like to get reporting. I'd like to know who's in the pipeline, how much money. I'd like to know, who did we pay $10,000 out to?
Who is keeping track of that, Kimberly?
It's community development. I'm working with, closely with the building department, knowing when the projects are completing, when they're submitting. They're submitting everything to Kevin right now for any receipts and stuff that which gets forwarded to the
And you have
finance
copies of all
department.
that? Because I'd like to audit that, Brad, and I'll send you something on that tomorrow.
We can pull the information. That's not a
Mhm.
problem. It's all in the financial record.
Well, the reimbursements we've paid so far is the dentist who had a sign permit. I believe Ed and Joe's had a sign permit. And I think there was a landscape grant for Susan, no, that wasn't.
Good, the chamber one, didn't we pay that one?
They
That was
haven't
a
put,
sign.
Chamber
they
sign?
haven't done theirs yet. They haven't put theirs up
They
yet.
didn't do it yet?
I
Okay.
just recall the two signs.
Yeah, it's just the two signs.
Because like I said, Kevin's kind of
This
been the one
Brad
that's
has to
been
be in there.
providing me the requests for the payouts. So,
Mhm.
those are the only two that I can recall right now.
Yeah.
But we can run that report.
Sure.
So the recourse on the project completion timeframes is, you said village board?
So if they need an extension, we would have it come to village board, because obviously that impacts the budget. And then we would get that approved or not approved. And then if they don't meet their timelines too, we have the ability to revoke the grant.
12 months, they're not completed, they haven't come to us for an extension, the grant's gone.
Yep.
I'm pretty
I'm
comfortable
okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
The capping of the grant funds.
70,000.
No, but that's per
Per
year.
year.
So right now, what happened
The
with
maximum
SIP
award
was
is
a
70 per year.
good example of why I don't like that we're just making it per year. He got his first grant, he applied for that, didn't even finish it. It's been over a year, I guess, because he applied for more, so he's over that 70,000, and he could be over 100, we're gonna give out 140 grand. I just think there should be some limit. I thought ECC, I was on the ECC when we came up with this.
Mhm.
70 grand was what we felt was enough money that we give out
Total.
to somebody that's taxpayer money,
Okay.
that's risking. It's not, this is a risk, if it's how this is gonna all play out. Giving more than that, to me, is questionable. I don't like it. I think I don't mind after they recoup their time period, whatever it is, they have to stay in business for 2 years, they want to get another one, okay. I think giving unlimited funds is not what the taxpayers would want us to do.
So how would you rephrase this?
I would say they only can have out 70,000 at one time, any point in time. If a year has gone by and they've gotten relief for half of it, or however that works, then they can apply for that, up to that amount, but they shouldn't get to
Because we
have
did
more
set
than
it
70
at
grand.
this. Right.
Mhm.
So you're saying when the
Well, yeah, but
project,
they have a 2-year time period. They
the
have
first
to-
project
yeah,
concludes, then they could start over, in other words?
So once it concludes and they say, okay, they have to stay in business for how long before they have to pay that back? I mean, that was part of this. Mr. Mangan, I remember him talking about, they put that in place, that it was, I thought, 3 years. They had to stay in business.
That's for the retail grant permit only.
Clawback.
And that's when the clawback goes into effect. One way you could look at this is you could cap this 70,000 and then they have a waiting period of 3 or 5 years before they could be, like I said, you could have someone who wants to do an addition later down the road or a modification. Would you want to encourage that? So you could have a waiting period of 3 or 5 years where they'd be eligible again once they capped, their 70,000. So that could be how you could restructure it.
Is it 3 years?
It's 3 years only for the retail grant, that they have to be in business for 3 years. If they close or leave prior to that, they have to pay back their
The
grant.
money.
So we're saying that if they do a code compliant, they could close.
And there'd be no clawback for that, correct? Because the infrastructure and the investments in the building, the property owner's benefiting from it, the next tenant will benefit from it. That infrastructure is going to stay there regardless if the tenant
But they
leaves.
could close and we get nothing. Then
But we
just-
get a
Now we
compliant
a
building.
resellable building for
Yeah.
someone else.
Because some of these buildings are limited with the type of users they can get now until they sprinkle the building. So we've allowed that building to have more uses out of it.
The
So we
intent
could
is
let
that the
somebody come in
building
and
is
buy up a
safer.
couple buildings and go ahead and do all these sprinklers for them all. They could do multiples, if I want to go buy up some buildings right now and have you guys pay half of all the sprinklers I'm going to do, we would allow that.
So if you buy a building and you want to apply for the code compliant grant, a sprinkler is a part of that program. So, yes.
And couldn't they have more than one?
If they own more than one building, they can apply for more than one
See, I
grant.
think that we have to, these are things we have, do we want to do that? Do we want someone coming in and buying and give it, and we're going to pay for half of it?
I think that some of these buildings were not ADA compliant, and the where Cousins is back in there was the impetus to get these going, because they're not sellable to anyone else. That whole thing is, you can't even get a wheelchair in there.
Right.
There's no way that,
But I mean,
without our help, that some of
benefited-
these buildings will be salvageable.
Right. And, yeah, I get that. I just, I don't want people taking advantage of it.
And neither do
And-
I.
And I think that's
And
one of the main reasons it comes before the village board, and we can vet these things and decide, hey, this guy's buying all these properties and doing some sort of scheme.
Right,
like
because
talking
we're only
about.
gonna make on it if they actually get them filled.
Right.
So if they could sit there for years and we aren't.
And we
just
do
spending
have a
money.
strict sprinkler requirement in this community. There is no, only if you do an addition is when you have, if you have a non-compliant building, it's not sprinkled, you have a time frame when you have to do it, regardless if the use changes or not. So I think this is a way to help. If we're going to have that as a code requirement, this offsets that and helps those property owners. I've had some businesses, I've owned this property for 15 years and now I have to sprinkle it, nothing's changing. But that's what we want to encourage, because we want that protection of our businesses or our properties, so.
Yeah, we want to give them
Residents
some
going in
help.
there.
They're not getting TIF funds.
Right.
No,
Like everybody
makes
else.
sense.
Mhm. Yeah,
So
so,
it sounds like you guys were talking about a cap at 70,000 and then a cool-off period before reapplication.
I think we should.
okay, I can recommend that to them. They were discussing that as an option too.
Okay.
So I can give them that feedback.
Thank you.
Landscape grant, do we want to talk about that one at all, or are we, just leave it alone?
Leave it alone.
we'll keep to monitoring it, yeah.
The bonus incentive,
Wait, did you want landscape, you good with that?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
the bonus incentive, did we consider the materials and supplies as well, or did we only consider?
That's too difficult to want to manage.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not going to get and look at everyone's receipts and verify, so, a contractor could be easily to verify. But again, what do you do when you have multiple contractors? And it might not come into play a lot, but it's something, obviously if we want to promote the community and, promote our local contractors, this could be a small bonus. The state does it at a state level, but also you're dealing with
Pools.
the entire state. So you have a lot more contractors to play around with. We would be limited to Tinley Park. So,
This seems like it could be a nightmare to try to manage.
Manage.
Bonus.
I just don't see the benefit
I don't think
of
I
it.
like the bonus. I mean, what do we do for other things? We have when we have RFPs and RFQs,
I mean,
Yeah.
we get
We
it,
give
what's the
people-
policy on that, Dave?
Yeah, if there's a local discount for bidders.
There's not a discount, there's a local preference.
preference, yeah.
So it means they get a discount off their bid, basically, in terms of how they're compared to others.
How you rank
Yeah.
them, yeah.
how you rank it.
It's nuanced.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I do want to encourage it, I just think this could
So
be-
what, should we call it preference incentive?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I don't know how we do it.
I don't either.
Yeah,
This just seems like it would cause a lot of work.
Pretty difficult to manage.
yeah.
Very difficult. I would not be in favor of it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't affect the caps at all. It was just, they'd get a higher percentage, it sounded like.
Yeah.
Oh, we'll change it.
So if you had a 3,500 grant, you could get an additional, $350.
Right.
Yeah, for the amount of work I think it'd create is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they discussed the management of the program.
I brought that up as, how much
Sticking
more
point?
difficult do we want to make this, so, but yeah. It wasn't a unanimous, group, supporting that bonus, so.
It's a nice thought, because I'd like to encourage that, but.
Yeah.
Yeah, too much.
Okay.
So
Clawbacks
then,
pending.
the clawbacks, I still think that they're only really valuable on the retail.
Mhm.
I don't know how you guys feel.
Well, the facade is also, isn't it?
No, it's just the retail.
We could maybe do it for the sign, because it would be so specific to the business, but
Mhm.
short of that, I don't understand. I don't see how we'd do it on the facade or the code compliance.
I mean, presuming that they finish the facade work, we're benefiting.
Correct.
Right, it looks
Yeah.
great, we're
Yeah,
happy,
that's-
you know?
I mean, yeah.
Same with the code.
But the
compliance.
sign, we don't, it's not the same business anymore.
They've addressed
Right.
the deficiencies.
Right.
So you've got a better building going forward.
Yeah, that's true. I can see that. Yeah, the sign is, but they're so reasonable.
They're
And that's such
Yeah.
a low
nominal.
amount.
Mhm.
And then on the clawbacks, again, the difficulty of getting it back is, we're going after a defunct business
Right.
at this
So
point.
again, it'd be the property owner, we would be kind of.
Right.
So we're gonna talk about how we have to modify the application too, to make sure the owner is giving that permission and
And we're not
acknowledging.
gonna
that-
bond this stuff or anything, so it seems very difficult. I understand the concept. We don't want these businesses going out of business a year after we give them the retail grant. I think the business plan is our mitigation point
Well,
on
that's,
this.
yeah, that's it.
You want to structure it so that it's just not a money giveaway.
Right,
Right.
That, there are some restrictions here.
yeah.
Mhm.
Difficult to enforce, but restrictions,
Granted.
yeah.
Well, what's the verbiage, can't the verbiage in there, when they sign it, say that there'll be a lien put on the property if they don't pay it back?
More than likely, they won't own the property.
Well, I mean, if is the owner though.
If they are the owner,
Well, contract, not the owner.
typically renting retail space.
Like I said, there are communities that do it. Dave reached out to Des Plaines and I got in contact with they do a lot of grants and, they have a restaurant grant, and they do talk about some clawbacks, and they get specific about the fixtures that are eligible for the grant. So I thought about looking at getting some of their language too and enhancing ours if we wanted to keep it.
I mean, and like, you know, clawback provision isn't foreign to us. I mean, we've done that
Mhm.
with our sales tax incentives for quite some time. And, but again, as you've indicated, sometimes it is challenging to enforce.
All right. So I'm okay with that, just let's see how the ECC does with it.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Sounds good.
okay.
Any other questions from the committee?
No, I think we should get some more detailed reporting on this. Like, you know, who's got the facade grants
Like I say,
and
you've got a
where their
good,
timetable is.
Kimberly's got a good summary in the packet here. We can just provide a little more, we'll provide that with a little more detail.
Would it be impossible to put this on the website and just say, here's our current facade, there are grants, the category,
No, we can.
how much they've received? It's all public knowledge.
Yeah, we can definitely look at adding it on the econ page as a summary, if you'd like.
Yeah, under the transparency.
Yeah, because one of the things I wanted to do with the website too is take some photos, especially some of these
Mhm.
facade grants, and do a before and after, and
Oh, yeah.
show, hey,
It's a
here's
great
where our
idea.
money went.
Tie it into GIS so you
Yeah,
can click
good.
around and see
Mhm.
the places.
Yeah,
Right?
I think the financial side of it, I think that make the transparency portable a kind of more of a one-stop shop. You know, the other information we can link back to the
Okay.
to the pictures and stuff. That would be great.
Okay.
I think if all the financial stuff in one place, it's easier for
People to find it.
people.
so I can have the before and after photos, and you can have the money.
Yeah, cool.
And well, cross.
Yeah.
Right. No, that's a good idea.
I love before and afters.
Yeah.
Who doesn't? It's like
'Cause then people will see
HGTV.
where the money's going. I like that a lot, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Anything else on that?
Nope.
No,
thank you all.
very much.
Mhm.
Thank you,
thanks,
Kimberly.
guys.
Item number 4, receive comments from the public.
Oh, he left.
Oh, there he is. Oh, no.
Jim is gone. Any items from the Community Development Department?
Just wanted to note the home that we authorized demolition on 174th Place was demoed today. That's behind South Street. That was completed. When I was driving by, there was just cleaning up the rubble. We had a meeting today with Carlson Brothers Construction, who's the GC for South Street. You will see them probably reactivated on the site next week with excavation. So praying for good weather so they can continue on. So those are two positive things in that area. We're seeing some activity. And
And they adjusted the construction, or they're adjusting the construction fence.
yeah, I had asked for them to, when they put their construction fence up, for it actually to be a privacy, so we can help screen some of that. And then we had a little bit of an issue at the intersection, so we took some of the screening back on the corners, so as you come to the stop sign, you can see traffic. But we'll be finalizing their plan reviews for their construction permit this week, so they can get working through that.
Sounds great.
Mhm.
Do I have a motion to adjourn the regular Community Development Committee meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. We're adjourned.
Thank you.